So hi everyone, and first of all, welcome to our seventh LocalStack community event. And in this community event, we are going to have two speaker sessions. The first speaker session is coming from Sacha Wharton. So Sacha is building up an open source project called as Ortelius. I guess I'm pronouncing the name right, but this project basically allows the developers to run their microservices and understand like what kind of projects that they're building. And these microservices are being deployed in a kind cluster using Terraform and PostgreSQL databases. And along with this, Sacha is also using LocalStack so that they can develop against AWS services locally. And this whole setup is immutable. So I don't want to spend a lot of time describing his setup because he has his whole presentation talking about this thing. And the second speaker session is coming from Anka. And in this speaker session, she is going to discuss about her AWS-powered Spring Boot application, which she has developed to run both against AWS and LocalStack. And she's going to walk us through around how you can configure your applications to run on production and on your local machine with some minimal configuration changes that she's going to walk us through. So this community meetup will be recorded and it will be available on YouTube after this meetup is over. And you can anyways check it out on our YouTube channel. And if you have not subscribed to it yet, you can just go and search about LocalStack on YouTube and you can find our channel over there. And you can stay updated with all of our community events and the past meetups that we have done. So regarding the audience participation, we have a Slido session that will be going on during the entirety of this particular session. So if you have got any questions, if you have got any concerns, or if you want to clarify your doubts, the best way that you can communicate it across with us is by using the Slido session itself. And if you want to join the Slido session, you can just navigate to slido.com. It can be on your mobile browser, it can be on your web browser. So just open a new tab, go and type in slido.com and you can just join it through this code, or else you can just scan this particular QR code and through this, you will get to become a part of the whole Slido session. So unlike the previous community events, we don't have any specific questions for you today to better know about you, because I guess most of you are quite excited on the prospects of knowing more about microservices development and how you can configure your AWS applications to run on LocalStack. But if you have got any questions that you directly want to ask to Sacha or Anka or to the LocalStack team, you can just directly use this particular session right here. So I'm just gonna paste this particular code on the Google Meet chat so that you can refer to it at any time. And if you have lost that particular code, just let me know and I can furnish that immediately. Cool. So these are the two agendas for our whole community event today. The very first one is to know about how you can lower the barrier for entry to microservices development, which will be presented by Sacha. So he will go initially. And it would be a 30-minute power-packed session where he's going to talk about a bunch of technologies like Kind, Minikube, LocalStack, Kubernetes, Helm, and a lot of different things. And the second session would be by Anka, where she will be talking about her Spring Boot application. And at the end of the session, I'm going to share a blog post that she wrote recently, talking about the same application setup itself so that you can easily follow it up and you can set it up on your local machine as well and you can test it out. So with that said, I will be handing it over to Sacha for the first speaker session. So welcome, Sacha. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm good. Thank you very much, Harsh. I just want to say thank you very much to the LocalStack team. Especially, I'm going to mention a few names if that's all right. Anka and Lila, I think I got that right. Don, thank you so much for all your support, guys. Really awesome. It's actually my first webinar, so meetup. So this is really cool to be able to sharing this. I've been working on this for quite a while. So my name is Sacha, and let me share my slides first before I start talking about that, so everyone can see that first. Okay, let me just get this working here. Slide. Slideshow. Just share my screen. Screen 3. Okay. Is it coming through?
Yes, perfectly.
I'm so glad I got internet because I had no internet for the whole day and I was a bit stressed about this presentation. Okay, so I got chatting to Anka, and by the end of the conversation, I'm here now doing this presentation, and I came across LocalStack looking for something to help our basically, I found a gap actually in Ortelius and the open source community. Many people were coming and trying to and joining, but couldn't really it was hard for them to get a grips of what Ortelius was and microservices and containers and all of that. So I decided, let me live on the edge and go and see if I can get this whole thing working locally, right? And I thought, it can't be that hard, right? Famous last words, right? So I ended up with getting stuck into kind and trying to choose the right technologies, and I've got to figure out how I've got to make this thing immutable. It's got to work on all types of machines, regardless of resources, right? You got to think about all these things, right? And what are they going to need to install? I don't want to give people like a shopping list to install, because they're just going to be like, no way, it's too much work, man. So yeah, let me, and this is how I got to this point of finding out that you could use a lot of open source tools. In fact, they're all open source, and you can deploy everything locally on a machine. And then I discovered LocalStack. I was like, wow, you can run AWS on your machine. I was like, no way, this can't be true, right? But it is, and it works. I can show you. So I think for an open source community, or people wanting to learn, whether you're a seasoned engineer or a graduate from university, or it doesn't matter who you are, you can use a cloud on your machine, right? And you can deploy your microservices like I'm going to show today. I've deployed all the Ortelius microservices. And my end goal is to migrate Ortelius locally to LocalStack, AWS. Because I come from a migration background. I'm a DevOps engineer for a company in Munich. And I'm outsourced to a large financial services client. And we've been specializing in taking their legacy applications, which are Angular front ends, Spring Boot Java backends, and supporting services, and also all their databases, and migrating them into AWS, EKS. We're using Argo, we're using Jenkins, we're using Atlantis, we're using Terraform, all those cool tools, right? But the tools are great, but the most important thing is people, right? Because for me, DevOps is about culture and it's about people. Tools are just a bonus for me, right? Tools are great, but it's about the people. Because without the people, you're not going to go very far. I think it's a super complex environment, and you need each other, because everyone's got their own little niche specialty. And sometimes your brain just gets so tired of staring at variables and little brackets, and you know how it gets. And you need a partner, right, to just go over your code, for example. Okay, so I come from Cape Town, South Africa. I love sunsets. I live by a beautiful beach. It's about 6 kilometers long, and it's called Noordhoek. And you get sunsets like that you can see on the screen. You get waves like you see I'm riding there. And I'm an aspiring DJ. But it's a bit of a struggle at the moment because of electricity issues, but we won't go into that. But I have a very nice Spotify profile and playlist. So if you'd like to go and check me out, you can't miss the leopard vest. It's really quite iconic, and it's totally legal in South Africa to wear a leopard vest. It's totally okay. I don't know about your countries, but I would wear my leopard vest in your country, and maybe I'd get locked up. I don't know, but it's totally cool here. I just wanted to, yeah. Huh? Yeah. Okay, so Ortelius is a really cool tool because I think it's something that really fills a niche that is missing in microservices. It basically unlocks all your supply chain intelligence that is trapped across the entire microservices pipeline or production line, right? Let's call it a production line, right? I call it like airplanes, they have the black box that records every single thing that happened on the flight. Ortelius is the black box of microservices. It records everything. And I'll show you just kind of in more detail on the next few slides how it does that. So this is a really great slide. This is actually showing you how the different areas that Ortelius fulfills. For example, your software bill of materials, it generates that for you. It does CVE reports, your release versions, your change tracking, and your application impact analysis. It'll show you the blast radius. So for example, if you're going to be changing a microservice component, it'll show you exactly which other components it's actually going to affect for that change, right? So it gives developers a very nice insight into actually what is going on within the microservice environment, right? And for example, with the whole log4j issue, Ortelius would have allowed you to solve the log4j issue with just a quick search which are my components across my microservices environment that has log4j. Poof, you search, this will show you them all, and you can just go patch them, right? Just like that. That sounds way too easy, I know, but it is. Here's just a really nice sort of detailed view of how Ortelius does it at the different stages, right? So you can see here, there's the versioning stage, there's a blast radius, application differences, logic application versioning. Don't worry, I won't read every single one of them because I know everyone can read. So, you know what I mean? And this is being recorded, so you can go and have a deeper look because I've only got half an hour. So this is just like a really, like I say, it's the black box, right? So it's a magnifying glass of everything that is going on inside your environment, right? Within one application, right? Which is pretty potent. It's pretty powerful, right? It allows, I think Ortelius is really going in an amazing direction because it's going towards that direction where your business people and your engineers are starting to get drawn closer together, right? I find it the hardest thing in DevOps. I don't know about everyone else on the call, but I find it that the hardest thing is to get engineers talking English or a language that the business people understand. Let's call it that, right? A common language, because we talk geek and they talk bottom lines and profit, right? And business strategy. And we're like, no, guys, we need to find a common ground here. And I feel like Ortelius is kind of moving in that direction, right? It's trying to show the business, hey, these are the challenges that we are facing within the software, and we're surfacing them. We're bringing them to light, and we're talking a common language to help show you how we're going to fix these things or solve these challenges, right? Obviously, Ortelius it's only been a project going for 2 years, so there's still a long way to go, but we've got a lot of cool things that are in the pipeline. This is also just another great view of how Ortelius is making this type of data actionable in terms of assigning release numbers, tracking your microservice versions and usage across all your clusters, centralizing all your security, DevOps, and SCA data, versioning your microservices, open source package usage. And actually, the other day, Steve, he's the head of architecture for our project, and the CTO of Deploy Hub, which is what Ortelius is the open source spin-off from Deploy Hub, right? And he was showing us the list of required documentation, or like readmes, licenses, and all this type of thing, maintainers, and all that. The list that you actually need in a repo, and it was incredible how many things you actually require to put in there, right? So Ortelius can really help you cover these gaps, right, and make sure that your application and your standards and that your repos are rock solid, right? And you go to the next one here. I don't know if anyone can see this. How does this look? Is it a bit small? This is a really great visual of what it looks like to be using Ortelius. So you can actually see the application level SBOMs in here. This is what this image is showing. It's showing you each SBOM, showing you actually the dependencies and giving you information about those dependencies. So, which is really great feedback for developers, right? Because it's recording all the time this kind of information. This is exactly what I was talking about, the log4j. Here you can see a visual image of a search for the log4j and dependency and where it's being used. And this will allow you to very quickly patch those microservices that are using maybe the vulnerable version of log4j. So it wouldn't have been like, oh, everyone's like just running around like headless chickens. You can just come to Ortelius, and it's been recording everything that's going on in your environment, and you can quickly come here and search and find and patch it immediately, right? Just saving a lot of time and pain. So this image is just showing where Ortelius fits in the pipeline. We were actually discussing this with Tracy, who's the CEO of Deploy Hub, and also serving on obviously the Ortelius project and one of the heads with Steve. And we were actually discussing whether Ortelius is kind of between the post build and the publish. But she kind of ended up deciding, let's put it here, because all the information that's gone on before Ortelius has been recorded by Ortelius as the central, the central contact point for all this information. So it's pretty nice visual just to see where does it fit in, right? I'm sure everyone's kind of getting an image maybe from their own experience and their own environments where it fits. Ortelius has started to, like I say, take this SBOM data and ingest it into a Rango database. We're actually busy with this project at the moment. This is for all the SBOM data. It'll be pushed into an Rango database using IPF storage and the blockchain. And because we're doing it in this way, and some people have said, like, why are you guys using blockchain? Isn't that a bit crazy? It's a bit of a crazy thing to do. I mean, like, well, this is the only way, because SBOMs are so detailed and there's going to be immense amount of data. This was definitely what we have found to be so far the best way to be able to aggregate all this data and to be able to use this data. So this is on the go at the moment, and this is going to be the next iteration of the Ortelius project. And we won a grant from the XRP Ledger organization to be able to create this solution. So this is just another view of the tools landscape in terms of open source security and where Ortelius is fitting in. And just because it's at the end, it doesn't mean to say it's only recording that block. It's actually recorded every single thing in each one of those blocks, right? So no matter what tool you're using, Ortelius has recorded everything. So that's why I say, and it's really cool to see this, because you just realize how complex and detailed these our environments are when it comes to microservices, right? And cloud. And this is just a great example of how Ortelius can fit in and really help you gather all this information together and make it very easy to search and very easy to understand which versions your microservices are at, and your CVE data, for example. Yes, and Ortelius is a incubating project on the CD Foundation, just so everyone had to put that in there, of course. So like I said, at the end of all of this, to get people into Ortelius and understand better what it did, I decided I'm going to build a local environment and deploy Ortelius and give people an understanding of, hopefully give people an understanding of microservices, help developers lower that kind of like entry point and make it maybe more visual. So I decided I'm going to build this immutable environment using Terraform, Kubernetes and Docker, kind, because I feel like kind is the closest you'll probably get to Kubernetes in the cloud. Somebody might have a different opinion, but I really like kind because I know that the Google engineers, they used it when they were troubleshooting Kubernetes, and if they were using it to troubleshoot, it must be pretty close to a live kind of AWS environment, for example, like an EKS, for example. I'm going to show dbeaver, which is a really nice graphical user database tool to access the databases. Just makes it much easier for developers. You're not having to. I know we all love the command line, but this is just a nice go-between, right? You can use a command line with this tool, but this is a really nice go-between between visuals and just making things easier. DevSpace, another incubating project from the CDF, allows you to deploy dev containers, which I have done already. And don't worry, I'm not going to make you guys watch me do the deployment because, wow, that would be boring. I've already deployed it, so don't worry. KubeShark is an amazing tool for developers to understand microservices and doing API troubleshooting. It's another open source tool. Sorry, guys, I don't know if you know I'm showing everybody your tool. And then, of course, LocalStack, which is so awesome. I had LocalStack embedded into the deployment of Terraform, but I thought, you know what, in order just to make the resources less intensive, since LocalStack has the most awesome extension in Docker, which if you haven't checked it out, you should go check it out, because I checked it out and it is super cool and it works amazing, right? Just do a little LocalStack, what is it, deploy, I think. Is it deploy, yeah? Something like, start, LocalStack start. And off you go. Everything comes up, right? LocalStack updates your container image. Cool, there you go on the latest version. Just don't forget to get the pro version because you're gonna need RDS to play around and some other cool stuff. Then I also discovered a really great tool coming out of Italy, actually, really cool. It's called Leap, and because we've got all authentications that we have to do. There's so many different, the authentication for cloud is so crazy and gets so complex. I was getting pretty frustrated one day, and I just went digging around the internet and I found Leap. I can really recommend you check that out for solving all things auth in the cloud native world. It's super cool. Then Thunder Client, you can embed that. That's a VS Code extension, super awesome for API testing. This entire environment is obviously completely immutable, so you can destroy and create as many times as you want. So if you make a complete mess of things, it doesn't matter, you just destroy it or recreate it. Don't worry, the database is mounted off a local folder on your machine, so your database will not be destroyed. It'll be kept in the same state, unless, of course, you want to get rid of it. Yeah, so let me show you what this all looks like. Just one more thing, like I say, I want to use LocalStack to test migrating Ortelius into AWS. I'm going to do it in LocalStack. I want to improve the dev container experience, and I also want to implement our event-driven architecture POC, which we ran with Kubectl being at the center of the entire deployment and recording process, and Ortelius obviously being the overarching black box for the entire ecosystem of Argo and GitHub and Kubernetes and Key and Google Cloud. Yeah. Right. Okay, now let me bring up my IDE just so I can show you some code. You know, if I can just get past the Google bar. How am I doing for time? What have I got? 4 minutes. Okay, that's perfect.
It's okay. Take your time.
Why is it not letting? See, this is trying to get my. Maybe it'll let me put it in now. Move it. There we go. There we go. I thought it'd be quite cool to show you some of the Terraform. I don't know. I thought it's pretty simple. What I've done here is allowed people to use custom mapping. So as a standard, the Ortelius will always run on port 8080 on your machine. So hopefully it doesn't clash with developers' environments on their own machines. If it is clashing, all a developer has to do is change this port here, this host port number, to anything that doesn't clash with the port, right? So you can check it out and it runs. Here's your Postgres SQL port. Same story. If it's clashing with another port, just change it, right? It's that simple. And this will deploy a master node and a one worker node. If you want to go crazier, you can change the code here, obviously, and you can add more workers if you really want to. You can see that the Postgres database mount is here, so it's just using an extra mount. You can see that on my machine, it's hosted from temp Postgres, and you can actually go and see all the Postgres files actually in there. Yeah, sorry, is this a bit small? Can anyone see this? I can zoom in if I need to, just let me know. Okay, cool, thanks. Thanks for the thumbs up. Ortelius is obviously, we're using Helm charts. All the microservices are obviously using Helm charts, so this makes it really cool because Terraform's got these great providers, right? The Helm provider is awesome, and all our Helm charts are stored in Artifact Hub. You can find everything there. I'm using these global overrides to override the local deployment so that I can control the ports that are that they're running on inside my machine, right? Which is really great, right? It's like it's very customizable if you're somebody who's wanting to come and use this, right? And it's all just done with Terraform, which is super awesome. I don't think there's anything else here that's too. It's just some basic providers here. I'm just using the kind provider, kubectl, and Helm. Yeah, there we go. Now that's it. Right, so let me show you. Now, let me just open up my Docker. See if I can move that in there. So here we go. We've got LocalStack running. You can see I've got RDS running, and yes, I deployed a database. I managed to deploy a database. Even though I had no electricity, I still was able to do this because I still had power on my laptop. That's why LocalStack is so cool, guys. You know, when you're in a country with no electricity, you can still code. You can still have fun on the cloud. And I deployed a Postgres database, on my local machine. I mean, it's awesome. And look at all the other tools you can use, right? It's incredible. So I fired it up and I deployed a database. And I'll show you what that looks like in dbeaver. Where's dbeaver gone? Here it is. So on this screen, you can see I've got LocalStack Postgres connected on 4.5.10. Yes, I cheated. I went to LocalStack's documentation. Thanks, guys. And I deployed the Postgres database from the test. It works amazing, as you can see. And here's the Ortelius database running on 5.4.3.2, which is running on a container inside the Kubernetes kind cluster. So how would I migrate this? I was having some thoughts here. I'm just thinking out loud. I could probably just do a migration of data from the kind cluster into the LocalStack Postgres cluster, right? Maybe I could do some fun and test running it in a HA type of environment, right? So you see, you can get really creative with this. This is fun. This is like seriously fun, right? You can have some real fun with and get to grips with this cloud thing, and you can test things rigidly without the overarching, without the, let's say, some of the companies we work in, for example, the financial services industry is extremely regulated, right? To get an account or to get access is hectic, right? It's like takes forever, right? Here you don't have to worry about any security. You can go crazy and you can just bypass all of that and just do it on your local machine, and you can get to grips with the technology without having to wait like 4 days for an account or something, right? Okay, now let me show you what this looks like inside the cluster. I hope this is all making sense to everybody. I hope I'm making sense. So I just did a kubectl get pods all, and as you can see here, we've got an Ortelius namespace with all the microservices running inside the namespace. This container is the developer container, which is running inside the namespace. And I'll show you how VS Code can connect into the cluster, and you can have your VS Code connected directly to this container, and you can do development or testing, especially as I think for a DevOps engineer, this would be cool. Maybe for developers too. I'm still exploring this, so I'd be really interested to hear other people's feedback and ways we could really utilize this. Almost done. So in your VS Code, you can go to Remote Explorer. And hopefully the demo gods are with me and I can remote into my dev container. It sets up an SSH connection. And whilst it's doing that, I can show you already on the command line. Here's the container. I'm on the container inside the cluster, right? And all I had to run was dev space, dev, and the namespace, and that's it. It deploys the container. I built a purpose-built container for developers for Ortelius with all the tools they needed, and now they have all the tools they need to be able to do whatever they need from the container. So this is that, and let me just quickly go to, and here we are. If I open a folder now, do I need to go? I think I need to go. Here we go to app. And if I go OK, come on, demo gods, don't let me down. There we go. Here you can see this is my repo, right, on my local machine. So it's actually anything I change in here, I can commit straight to the repo, but I'm actually inside the container doing this. This as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner here. Oh, sorry. Hold on, let me just. My Mac bar is destroying the view. As you can see in the bottom left here, SSH app dev, you see, it's my VS Code running inside of the cluster on that container. I've got and I can have all my tools that I normally use on an everyday basis in here, all my extensions, anything, right? It's a self-contained environment for developers because I love my developers because I'm a DevOps engineer and I need to serve them with the good stuff, right? You know, make their lives easier, not harder. And you can set up a really secure SSH connection. you can already do this with code spaces in GitHub. You can, for all your repos, you can actually create a dev container where anybody from around the world could come there and just click on there in code spaces and fire up a container and contribute to your repository. I would really recommend you investigate it. It's super cool. And last but not least, the last thing, guys, I wanted to just show you Kubeshark. Kubeshark is going to tap Ortelius. I live dangerously. I do live demos. Yeah, I know. But when it works, it's fantastic. Yeah, I'm adrenaline junkie. Hopefully, it has opened up the port for me. Oh, it's still busy. Here we go. This is looking good, guys. This is looking good. Here we go. Oh, my word. This is so amazing. Check how cool this is. Can you see this? This is the Kubeshark traffic viewer for Kubernetes, right? This is like demystifying the traffic that's going on between the microservices, right? This is super cool. You can see and filter and check exactly what is going on between your microservices now. Like, you know, the blindfolds have come off, right? It's like, oh, my word, I can actually, this feels like the old school days, right? When we still had, you know, pieces of tin you know, or maybe even virtual machines. But this thing is so powerful. I mean, you don't have to tap all the pods. You can just tap a portion of the pods. You can filter the traffic. You can obviously see here TCP streams. I mean, you can go bananas here, right? It even gives you a service map if you want this. I know it doesn't look too impressive right now because there's not much going on, but it actually draws a little thing to show you. Oh, wait, hold on. This is in dark mode. Sorry, guys. Let's just take that off. There you go. You know what I mean? It draws like a little service map to give you just another view, right? To give you another perspective on your environment. And then obviously here, it just gives you a basic cheat sheet on how to do filtering out what you want, right? So you can, if you're working on a certain portion of the code, you can actually just go there and filter down to that specific information. And that is my presentation. And thank you very much, guys. I hope everybody learned something, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Anke. I'm looking forward to yours, which is coming next.
Thanks a lot, Sacha, for presenting this really cool demonstration. My
No
voice is
worries.
a little down right now, I would say. But yeah.
Sorry, I went a bit long there, guys. Yeah.
That's completely fine. I guess there was a hand raised from Jerkin. I guess that's the correct pronunciation. Can you please go ahead? Okay, I don't see him on the session any longer. Yeah. Hi, Sushruth. Can you please go ahead with your question? Seems like there are no questions coming from audience. We might have some questions on the Slido session. So Sacha, can I try sharing my screen to just show these questions to us?
Oh yeah, sure. Let me stop sharing.
Sure.
Cool.
Yep. So there are 3 questions right now for us. Okay, so the first question is like, what is LocalStack using to implement EKS kind or something else? So I guess Waldemar has been working quite a lot upon EKS part. So Waldemar, would you like to take up this question?
Yeah, sure. So like EKS, LocalStack is using K3D. That's kind of what we use under the covers. We do have a workstream also to integrate kinds, because as Sacha mentioned, this is kind of what really has a very good support from the Kubernetes community. So far, K3D has been quite lightweight and nice for our purposes, but definitely looking into kind as well.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for helping out with this question. I guess this is a question for you, Sacha. Is there a managed version of Ortelius that we can use? Or is the OSS version available to use?
Yeah, you can use the OSS version too if you wanted to, to give it a try in your environment. I would really recommend that. I can't wait to deploy it in. I'd love to deploy it in a client's dev environment. It would be amazing, right? Can you imagine how cool that would be to show managers or your production man or whatever, your manager, like all that kind of thing? Yeah, exactly. And then deploy hub is the commercial version, right? Which is a SaaS-based solution. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So thanks for helping out with this. And the final question is like, is the code available somewhere?
Yep. github.com/Ortelius/Ortelius.
Awesome. I guess this was being asked regarding the demonstration. So is the demo code available somewhere?
Yes, it is. Also under Ortelius, except without, so github.com/Ortelius/dev-env-setup.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I maybe just find that particular repository and I can just share it across on the chat for everyone to just go across it.
Yeah, I can.
We can also collect all this information and put it in the video description once it goes on YouTube.
Yeah, I can do
Awesome.
that. I see someone just, Harsh, you put it there. Cool. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. So I guess we are done with all the questions. So is there any other question from the community regarding Ortelius or just getting started with this? Because I guess it's a cool project, but I just need to get a more technical deep dive to understand how I can try to fit this in with my existing projects. But yeah, this was a really cool demonstration. Thanks a lot for this.
No problem. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Cool. So since we are almost on time, maybe we can jump to the next speaker session, which is by Anka. So I guess, Anka, the stage is yours. Please just go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just a second. I will share my screen. I assume it's visible now?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. So yeah, that's a tough act to follow. Sacha was such a vibe. But we can talk a little bit about how you can easily develop and test your AWS-powered Spring Boot application locally. As Harsh mentioned, this was a blog post about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I feel like blog posts are not doing enough justice for demo applications. So this is a good opportunity to highlight some cool features. Before we dive in, a little bit about myself. I'm new to the DevRel scene and also new to LocalStack. I think it's been less than 2 months. But if you ever want to collaborate on any materials regarding LocalStack, you can contact me via email or Twitter, and this is my GitHub username. This is where the demo will live. You can go check it out, but I will also link it. Let's start off with a phrase that stuck with me. I think I've seen this in one of our presentations or on our site at some point, and it says that your application won't even know the difference. I found that very exciting, and this is what we're going to talk about today with our Spring Boot application running on AWS resources, and then exactly the same functionality being available on LocalStack. So I guess talk is cheap. Let's just dive in. First off, let's have a quick overview of the architecture. This will be a shipment tracking list demo. Probably I forgot to mention, but I have a background as a software engineer. And at my previous company, we were doing logistics, or yes, that was the main activity. So shipment tracking is a very real life example here. So we're going to be using a React app for the front end to display our information and use it to upload pictures and view pictures, as well as delete entries. There's also a create and update API available via REST. I was a little running out of time to implement that fully. In terms of AWS resources, we're going to be using a DynamoDB to store our entities. We're going to be storing pictures in an S3 bucket, which will trigger some validation and replacement in case these pictures are not compliant. This will be done by a Lambda function. And of course, the middle layer will be our Spring Boot application, which will be, yes, the glue holding all of this together. Now, as a side note here, I know this is not the most common arrangement. Normally, you would run your Java application or a Spring Boot application in an ECS or EC2, but regardless, this will not affect what I'm going to show you and how you should configure your application for easily switching context between AWS and LocalStack. Yeah, and for the sake of demo and simplicity, we will be running this this application on my machine. This also covers the scenario where your application is already mature and you're using AWS. So you're using AWS for your production, your test environment, and also for your development environment, and you want to make the switch. So yeah, we can jump to the demo. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention a few things. Before we jump to our application, there are a few key points that we want to have in our application's configuration, which will help us with transitioning more easily. First off, we want to have our bean configuration using the configuration annotated classes. This is very common in configuring your beans in the Spring environment. For those of you who are not familiar with what a Java bean is, think of it as a reusable object that follows certain conventions, like a Lego block that has its own shape and purpose, and it has its own mechanism of fitting in. You want to use the Java AWS SDK, which helps you interact with AWS resources. If you're also not familiar for that, this software development kit is basically a bunch of high-level Java tools, such as pre-compiled code that encapsulates low-level details on how to interact with these resources, such as authentication or parsing responses. Further on, we're going to be leveraging one of the core features of the Spring framework, which is Spring Profiles. This will enable us to have environment-specific configurations for each of these beans that I just mentioned. And finally, we're going to be provisioning our infrastructure using Terraform to maintain consistency across all our environments. And in a minute, you'll see how that will help us. Okay, let's switch to the IDE. And I can show you how to run this application. Oops. On AWS. Okay, this is not cooperating. We mentioned the configuration classes. This is how we normally configure our S3 bean, S3 client bean. We annotate the class with configuration, and Spring Boot will take care of all of that. You have these values that are being injected from configuration files here. We're going to be using production mode in this case, so we're going to be using application-prod. And you can see our endpoints are configured here for our real AWS resources, which is a DynamoDB and an S3. And yes, as you can see, all of these are part of the AWS SDK. You can see here, we're using it as a dependency. And yes, you pass your credentials to these objects, and the client builder will take care of the rest. And the same goes for the DynamoDB configurations. In this case, you will need a mapper. What else did we mention here? We're going to check the Terraform file real quick. You can find all of this code in the repository. I'm going to provide that for you. So this Terraform file will help create our S3 buckets, configure the access control list. It will create a DynamoDB table, which will then get populated with some dummy data that I prepared here in a JSON file. We're going to have a bucket for our Lambda code. It will also create our Lambda function. So everything that has been described in the architecture diagram. And it will also configure some permissions that will enable our resources to easily communicate between them. So let's go to this tab. I have it already configured, like I labeled my tabs nicely, so I too can live dangerously and try to build stuff live. Let's hope the demo gods are on my side. Let's go to the Terraform folder. I separated the AWS Terraform from the Terraform that we will be using with LocalStack because there are some files that are being generated to keep track of our infrastructure. So let's do a Terraform init real quick. Okay, we're going to be doing Terraform plan. If you're not familiar with Terraform, what plan does is to create an execution plan for the infrastructure changes that are specified in this file that I just showed you. The plan command examines the configurations and compares them to the current state of our infrastructure, and it will determine what needs to be changed or created, depending on the case. And Terraform apply will just execute this plan that we just created. And it will ask me for approval here. Let's see. It takes a little bit because obviously we're not the only ones creating resources on AWS. Okay, and as you can see, we have 16 resources added. Yes, you've seen them in this file here. It's not just 2 buckets and 1 Lambda function. It's a little more than that. We have our front end already started here in this tab. Okay, it's not looking nice. And for the part of the Spring profiles, we're going to be starting our application in production mode. Okay, I'm just going to use autofill here. You can see that you have your Maven Spring Boot run command, and you need to mention this flag and specify that it's the production environment that you want to use. And this will read our configurations from the application.prod. YAML file that we just saw. Alrighty then, it seems that everything is going according to plan. I don't need to be worried about being embarrassed right now. And this was the front end in the beginning where there were no resources and no backend application. And now you can see that our application is populated with our sample data, and we can start adding our pictures. In case you're not aware yet, we're going to be using banana for scale, because how else would you know what your package is? What's the size of your package, right? So yeah, I didn't implement auto refresh here, but for example, this cat is 3 bananas long, and we have another package here. This all goes through the Lambda function, which makes sure that it validates the extension. It makes sure that it's one of the accepted ones. JPEG is one of them. And in case you try to upload a wrong file, for example, a TXT extension, this will probably take 1 second extra. It will replace it with a generic file, while letting you know that you were wrong to upload that one. Yeah, you can also delete some of these. So yeah, that's our application running on AWS resources. Now we can continue the slideshow. So you want to switch from AWS for your development environment to LocalStack. And you might be wondering why. Well, because of reasons. Most applications are not as simplistic as this one with using their resources. You have way more than 16 resources. Creating resources is generally very time-consuming. And I wanted to remind you that about a month ago, we had this Twitter post where that was inspired by one of our colleagues who was trying to set up managed streaming for Kafka for local development and testing. And the exact same Terraform configuration file ran for 28 minutes on the real AWS and only 24 seconds on LocalStack. So you can imagine if you make mistakes and you want to do that a few times a day, you're not gonna be happy. With all the context switching, you're gonna go have a coffee. It won't be 30 minutes. It's gonna be 50 and so on. So that's not very, very nice for a developer. Also, development cycles can be slow and cost you time in general. If you have to always build and deploy your application. The resources are usually tedious to clean. With LocalStack, you can just shut down your container and they're gone. Unless you want to, you can use some nice features that we have for that. And if you don't dispose of your resources properly, they can end up being costly. And yeah, we don't want that. Also, in this case, you probably did not notice, but interaction between different resources on AWS can take some time. Whereas on LocalStack, they happen very fast. Okay, and we need to keep in mind that switching to LocalStack is just 3 easy steps away. You need to configure your development environment variables. We've seen how to do that, but we'll have a short look at the YAML file. You start your LocalStack on Docker, and you run the exact same infrastructure as code configuration file as I've shown you before. Okay, so let's just switch to the IDE. And where are we? Have a look at our application-dev YAML file, you can see we configured the endpoints to reach LocalStack. It's the same for S3 and DynamoDB. For the sake of everything being easy and not needing extra validation, I set these dummy access key and secret key, but you don't really need those anymore. So let's stop our application running in production mode and switch to our tf-local folder. In tf-local, you will find the exact same Terraform file, but we're going to be using the tf-local command line tool, which is basically a thin wrapper around Terraform, which configures your endpoints for LocalStack. Otherwise, you would have to do it manually. You can also use Terraform, but this is way easier. So we're going to do a tf-local init. Okay, and we forgot to start our LocalStack. You can start LocalStack either using this Docker compose that I have here for you if you're interviewing your configuration in a file in a very clear way, or you can also use the LocalStack command line tool. You can just localstack start and it will spin up your LocalStack container. All right, we're going to be doing tf-local plan to plan our resources. Demo gods, don't fail me now. Okay, and we have the all clear sign to do tf-local apply. Now I'm going to be passing a environmental variable here. This is for the lambda function, so it knows to point to LocalStack, to the LocalStack S3 endpoint. So it will know how to communicate with the S3 bucket storing our pictures. I feel like I should have talked after pressing enter. Sorry about that. And this should be creating our buckets, our DynamoDB table, populating it, our Lambda. Where do we stand on time? Okay, let's hurry it up a bit. There you have it. And we will do Maven Spring Boot run, and we will pass this dev flag here. So it will use our dev environment configurations. Okay, nothing broke. And we're going to do a refresh here. And of course, we have fresh data because it's using the same sample data file. But you will see that we can still measure our shipments in bananas. And we will have here a banana on a scale for scale. We can still delete some of them. And there you have it. Our application is maintaining the functionality with a very smooth transition. We basically configured 2 files, minimal code change. Yeah. I wanted to mention that this does not stop at Spring Boot. If you're not a Java Spring Boot developer, there are other profile-based configuration frameworks that you could use. You have Rails for Ruby, for example, Express Happy for Node.js. Django for the Python ecosystem, Laravel for PHP. I am not familiar with that. I just Googled it, but there are AWS SDKs for all of these languages that you can use. So it should be pretty easy peasy. So I hope that I convinced you to make the switch, and probably you will have a nice trip from here on. And that was my presentation. Thank you.
That was awesome.
Thank you, Harsh.
Especially the last meme, I guess that just lightened up the entire mood.
Yes, it's very popular now on social media, so I thought you guys might appreciate it.
Yeah. Which show was it from, if I may ask?
Sorry?
Which show was it from?
Something about the terrible weight of talent. I don't remember the name of the movie, sorry.
No worries, no worries. Sacha, you were saying something, I believe.
No, I was just making a comment because Anka just reminded me of the very humble letters I've had to write to AWS and Azure to say sorry for leaving my EKS cluster running and in racking up a fantastic bowl. So yeah, it's just making me laugh. So LocalStack is perfect for me because it's safe.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yes, so cost saving is not the main focus. It helps, definitely, but developer productivity is the best.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So I believe we have some questions on the Q&A part, so maybe I can share my screen and we can just quickly go over to that. Yeah.
Stop.
Awesome. So if there are any more questions that people might want to ask, please feel free to put it on the chat so that I can directly pick them up. But
please do it now, or then you'll have to Google them.
Yeah. So I guess this question came in when you were demonstrating the MSK deployment on LocalStack. So are there any similar benchmarks for other scenarios like EMR or Glue? I believe we are not benchmarking these kind of performances as of now. I may be wrong about this, but if there are similar benchmarks coming up, we have the LocalStack Pro samples and we have got the LocalStack Terraform samples. So we can just put all the code over there and you can take it for a run on both AWS and LocalStack, and you can discover these kind of performance improvements, especially for local development and testing. Cool. I guess the second question is for you, Anka. It's like how easy is to use LocalStack with Quarkus or Micronaut?
So my understanding is that it should be just as easy as it was with Spring Boot, but I have no real experience with these. It has been suggested to try this, and I guess I have it on the list of demoing. If you want to stick around and follow me, I could try to do that. Sorry, it's not a very clear answer, but it should be doable.
Yeah. Cool. I guess that should just do it for now. We can maybe try to put out some content so that people can easily follow up with this, so that they can configure their Quarkus or Micronaut applications to use LocalStack.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't see how you folks deploy the client and server. Is it being worked on? I guess this question is coming up with this particular part. I guess the Spring Boot application and the React application is not running on any AWS resources.
No, actually, they're running on my local machine. Like I said, normally you would want to have an EC2 or ECS. Sorry. It's something on my to-do list. I should probably start working on that. I did, but it's not ready yet.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for this particular part. How do IAM policies work with LocalStack? Are they created or similar to just like AWS? I guess like if Thomas is here with us, I guess he can maybe speak about it a bit. If he's not, then maybe I can just share the documentation right over here. So regarding IAM policies, I believe we have a pretty good implementation with regards to IAM, and it is available on the LocalStack Pro, so you might have to take up a license for that. But with LocalStack, you can basically create your IAM users, access keys. And I guess the best part about using LocalStack with IAM is that you can actually enforce these IAM policies. So we provide this particular configuration variable called as enforce IAM, and you can just set it to 1. And if you're starting local stack, and if there are some IAM policies that are conflicting with each other, or if you're trying to access a resource that should not be accessible to you, local stack is going to fire up and it is going to give you an error message. And I guess this is a pretty good tool for security hardening, because now you can define these policies. You can actually test it on your local machine so that whatever you push on the cloud, it should not get accidentally exposed to any outside person after all. And I guess this is something where you can actually use local stack's IAM emulation to get the things on the better side. We also have got explainable IAM, which was released with LocalStack 1.0. And with this, you actually get like called as a failed policy evaluation, so that you can actually try to fix your IAM policies to see like how you can get the things around. I guess this should just do it. And there are some other features as well that you can check it out. And yes, IAM enforcement is available for all the AWS APIs. So no matter what service you're using within LocalStack, IAM should work ideally with all of them. If there are any issues that you might encounter with IAM, or if you think that you want to make something better, please reach out to us and we will try to get that on our roadmap. What's the support for AWS SDKs for other languages? I guess I can take that up. So regarding the AWS SDKs, we have a separate documentation over on the integrations. And you can just go and check it out, and you can use all the AWS SDKs with LocalStack, because all that you need to do is to configure the edge port where LocalStack is exactly running, and that would be just enough for you to send all of your API requests to LocalStack instead of AWS. I guess that should just do it over here. Cool. So thanks a lot, the person who actually suggested me this movie. I guess it would be a good weekend watch. But that was it for the day. So thanks a lot for participating in this community event. If you have any feedback for us, please reach out to us directly, and we'll be more than happy to take that feedback into our loop so that we can do better in our future meetups. If you want to, yes, Lewis, if you want to say something, please go ahead. I guess he has his hands raised up, but he's not able to unmute himself.
Or maybe it was a mistake between clapping emoji and raising hands. That maybe happens often.
Awesome. So that should be fine. And if there are any upcoming use cases that you want us to cover, please reach out to us. And if you want to speak at any of our future meetups, you can reach out to us as well on Slack or by email, and we'll be more than happy to host you. Till then, have a happy rest of the week, everyone, and have a good rest of the day. And we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.